how accurate or inaccurate are the here are your calories burned if we're just going by, let's just start with a step counter.
So before we before I give you that exact number, I think it's important to understand a little bit about like what these things are measuring and which are direct measures and which are like proxy measures and which are based on algorithms, right?
Yeah, because that's a good point. Because what are they measuring exactly?
So things like heart rate monitors, whether it's your watch or one of those polar chest straps, etc., they're actually relatively accurate for measuring heart rate, right? Because it's a fairly direct measure. Whether they're using like electrical, whether they're using optical, whether they're using like mechanical. There's a lot of different ways to like measure heart rate, but they're usually pretty accurate within like 5 to 10% of what your actual heart rate is, right? So if it's 60 versus 55, like that's within the realm of accurate to where it's useful. Because when you're measuring heart rate, especially during exercise, what you care is like, am I at resting heart rate? Am I at 100 beats per minute? Am I at 150 beats per minute? Am I at 200 beats per minute, right? Like whether it's 55 or 60, that doesn't really matter that much. What you're trying to do is use these to gauge overall workload and capacity, right? That's for heart rate. Step counters, right? Almost all of these step counters use mini accelerometers, and they're pretty accurate for step counts. Now, with the exception of like if you're on a vibrating platform for an hour, you didn't really take 5,000 steps. It was just shaking your watch for a while. Or if you're like
That's pretty good.
pushing a shopping cart and it's on your hand and it's not really bouncing, like there's all those things. But they're relatively accurate within probably 10% for steps, right? So it's 9,000 steps versus 10,000 steps. Like that's fairly accurate. Those are all things that are like direct measures. Then you have things that are like imputed or algorithm driven from all the other measures. So things like energy expenditure is a multivariate equation that all of these things that have small errors in, like if your heart rate has errors in it, if your step rate has errors in it, if your sleep has error in it, those all compound and then you end up with a much larger error at the end. So things like your Apple Watch giving you an energy expenditure, that's really not very accurate, right? And they've measured that against gold standards of like indirect calorimetry or doubly labeled water. And we know that energy expenditure for most people on those things is off by 15 to 30%, right? And that's a meaningful error. So if you're burning
Yeah.